Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our meeting number 14 of the ACE Mentor School Year 2022-2023. This is the last of our series of virtual meetings for this school year. As you know from your schedule and your curriculum list of classes and assignments, that this meeting is going to be about presentation preparation. Part of the ACE Mentor Year, really the culmination of it is the presentations that each of you teams are going to be doing, both in your in-class competitions. And if you are the winner of that in-class competition, you're going to be presenting at the presentation night on May 10th. So since that presentation is a very important part of our assignments, then we wanted to have a specific class, such as tonight, to go over presentation preparation information. For this class, we have with us Quinn Chessman. Quinn Chessman from Thornton Tomasetti. I want to say thank you to Sakshi Singh, one of our mentors, for inviting Quinn to be with us. Quinn works in business development and marketing at Thornton Tomasetti. So she is a professional and an expert in the field of presentations. And at this time, Quinn, I will turn it over to you, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Sakshi, and the rest of the ACE group. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with your students today. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you see it.
We do.
Okay, wonderful. Can you see the presentation?
And we see the presentation now, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So you've probably heard the saying that the only thing people fear more than death is public speaking. And so this joke from Jerry Seinfeld kind of sums up the sentiment brilliantly, because people are so afraid of public speaking. He jokes that you're better off in a casket than giving a eulogy. So very, very funny image to think about as you're preparing for this. So you're not alone. So I'm Quinn Chessman. As Jacob mentioned, I'm an associate principal at Thornton Tomasetti. My entire career has been spent in the AEC industry. Before I joined TT 7 years ago, I worked for various architecture firms doing marketing and business development. So I've done my fair share of presentation preparations and also deliveries. And now I lead TT's higher education, business development on the national level, and the persuasive presentation skills COP, which is community practice. And so in this capacity, I coach my colleagues ahead of presentations and interviews. And a little bit about me beyond work is when I'm not working, I am beholden to my children. And when I'm not beholden to my children, I really like to run. So just a little bit about me. So there are endless amounts of videos, articles, and books out there that you can reference that will provide you with resources, tips, tricks to make you a better presenter. There's a whole library shelf full of books. But to be honest, they all really boil down to the same advice. So it's essentially these 10 best practices. So I'm going to take you through each of them to help guide you as you start putting together your presentation or polish it off and finalize. So as I mentioned, I'm in business development at Thornton Tomasetti, and we have a variety of clients here. So we have contractors, architects, building owners, developers, lawyers, and insurance companies. So we provide different services to each of these clients. And so when we go to pitch TT, we tailor our conversations and presentations to the various needs of the client. So say I went to a contractor and spent an hour talking about all of our elegant structural solutions and impressive, expressive facades instead of constructability and site presence. They would probably sit there, kind of stone-faced, probably talk about how I wasted their time when I left, which I did, and then never call me back. So figuring out who your audience is before you start outlining your presentation is so important. It will help you frame the conversation in a way that will make sense to them, and it will be mutually beneficial. So you'll leave the presentation and the discussion, with mutual knowledge. And if you're giving a technical presentation to your peers, you might go into detail a bit more than if you were giving a how-to presentation. So you're really going to want to put yourself in the shoes of your audience and then go from there. So be prepared. It seems so obvious, but a lot of people don't prepare, and they leave it up to the last minute. But in order for your presentation to go seamless, you really have to practice. It's key to a successful presentation. So the strongest presenters tirelessly practice their presentations over and over again. Steve Jobs was notorious for spending weeks preparing for his town hall meetings, which you think, hey, it's Steve Jobs. He was running a multi-billion-dollar company, Apple. What is he doing spending his time practicing his presentations? But if you've seen him speak, he's super conversational, super comfortable. So in that space, that's because he had taken a lot of time to prepare. One of the first presentations that I gave when I was at Thornton Tomasetti was about 3 months after I joined. And I was going to present a strategy for the higher ed business development. And this is the first time TT had brought somebody in from as a market sector lead. So every year we have an owners meeting in New York. So I'm going there. I wasn't an owner then. And I'm preparing to present this strategy and convince people to join me and do my bidding across the firm in hopes to get more business. And I had all my content good. Like, it was good. I walked through with multiple people, but I practiced that presentation so many times. And I practiced it in front of the mirror. I practiced it in front of my colleagues, and I actually recorded it so that on my flight from Chicago to New York, I was listening to myself. And I did that so I could remember what I was going to say. I was not scripted, but I was able to recall the various points in the presentation. Should I have gotten a question or say, hey, technology fails, I don't have that. I just need to know what I'm going to say and when I'm going to say it and the point that I'm going to make. So not saying that you have all the time in the world to record yourself and study and all of that, but I will say try to get a number of practices on the calendar, practice in front of your colleagues, your teachers, your mentors, your parents, your siblings. Just practice as much as you can, because the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll be. And then if anything happens, you'll be able to get through it. Should technology be an issue? So starting your presentation, you want to think about, how you might capture the audience's attention right from the start. A lot of times people introduce themselves, introduce the name of the presentation, and then go through the agenda. So I would recommend that you think about, is there a way to capture the audience through a story? Perhaps setting the stage and what you're talking about, why you are presenting what you're presenting. you can start with facts, a quote, or a joke. If you feel that you have a great sense of humor and that's part of your brand, then that's always a nice way to get people engaged. So keeping it simple, this is actually one of the hardest parts about preparing and giving a presentation. There's often so much to say, especially if you're passionate about the topic. So passion does not equal simplicity. So it's really important to parse through the details and keep only the pertinent information within the presentation will allow for a clearer story. I would ask yourself, why is what I'm saying important? And if you cannot come up with a good answer, it's not worth including. And if you have some time, walk through your presentation with someone who is not entirely familiar with the topic to get their take. So they'll be able to identify points where things get too complex or dense, and then you can pivot from there to refine and reduce or elaborate as needed. And this also goes for any stories, data, and visuals as well. So I sit in a lot of technical presentations given by my colleagues at TT, and they're brilliant engineers and scientists and architects, but they like to state facts about the project rather than what is the driving force behind the solution at times. So when we sit in on these practice presentations, we will advise them to keep things at a high level. So we commonly suggest they reframe the problem and the solution as a story or a series of stories. So it's not, we have a waffle slab and we put this partition in. It's more of the reason why you put the partition in that specific area of the waffle slab. People tend to remember stories and examples better than abstract concepts, so use them to illustrate your points. Think about the fables from your childhood and how the lessons are ingrained in your memories today, right? So basically all of those fables were stranger danger. So that's something that's never going to go away. The use of visual aids. So photos, graphics, infographics and statistics are great ways to illustrate your points. I tend to like to use bigger pictures versus lots of text or bullet points. I feel that words on slide often distract the audience and they stop listening to you and begin to read your slide. So you really want your audience to be looking at you and listening to you. And if their eye wanders, it wanders to the screen behind you, but that image is actually reinforcing what you're saying. It's not there for them to learn. The same goes for bullet points too. So try to avoid bullet points. I know that sometimes you have to include them, and that's fine. Make sure that you limit your words. I think it's about 7 words per bullet point. And then also resist the temptation to read from your slide, and look back at your slide too, because it comes off more fluid if you are looking at the audience and not reading from your slide. I would also avoid putting multiple graphs on the same page. I'm not sure if that will be part of your presentation, but keep it simple. You don't want to have multiple technical pieces of information, because unless you get to your point very quickly, people are going to get distracted by those images. Use body language to reinforce your message and make eye contact with your audience to engage them. So typically I use my hands a lot when I present. It helps me release any nervous energy that I have. I get nervous giving presentations too. It's totally natural, and I find that when I move, that energy gets I also think that it animates me a little bit more, so I'm not so stiff. Most of my presentations are given around a conference table, though. So when I stand up, I like to walk around slightly, not pacing, not something that's distracting, but I don't stand behind a podium or anchor myself beside the screen. So it also helps me engage with the audience. I'm able to make eye contact with other people. And most people really do pay attention to others who are activated. And so if you're stiff and you're not moving and you don't have open body language, people tend to tune out. And I'd also say beware of what your face looks like too. You don't have to smile like big grin, but I would pay attention to how you present your face. Are you tense? Are you relaxed? Are you slight smile? And you can do so. I like to practice in front of a mirror because it will give me a sense of how I look. And then be mindful of your pace. So you'll want to basically be aware of the speed at which you speak and make sure you give yourself time to pause. So if you run long, which happens to everyone, everyone's tempted to speed up and talk really, really rapidly and get through the slides so that they can finish and the thank you slide. That's not how you want to go about doing this. If you find yourself running long, you need to think about dropping parts of the presentation, not dropping like slides and skipping through the slides. But if you've practiced your presentation enough, you know exactly what points you're going to make on that slide, and you'll know what information you can omit in order for you to get the salient points out, but also meet your time. So that's a little pointer on how, if you're going long, how you can shorten your presentation. And I have to say this, I am guilty, but ums and ahs are, regular offenders in presentations. I've said multiple uhs and ahs today. I will say that, it's not something to get down on too much, but if you do find yourself saying or ah a lot, make a note. And when you feel an or an ah coming up or an pause. Give yourself a breath. And strong. Really, your ending needs to tie a bow on top of the presentation. Think about, what are the takeaways and the lessons learned, and, really hit that home before you end and ask questions. And then finally, and I think this is the most important part, second only is the practice and being prepared. I think authenticity is key. So everyone is unique, right? You have your own style, and being authentic is the first step to becoming a strong speaker. I also find that observing other people's presentation styles is helpful. I have observed others. I've watched TED Talks and even just my own colleagues. One of our co-CEOs is just a masterful presenter. I find traits that resonate with me, and I think to myself, okay, how could I apply these traits? So you could emulate people in some way, and I think public speaking is a journey, right? It is going to be probably a lifelong journey if you're going to, go on to a career in professional services. You're going to have to talk to people. Maybe you're not getting up in front of 500 people or 100 people, but you're you're going into a boardroom, or you're standing up in front of your office, or your college class. So you're going to evolve over time, and so just take every opportunity to get better, furnish your skills. So I think, and hopefully you all think, that these steps are simple to follow, and they're only 10. Again, just reinforcing it just takes time and patience to hone in on your best possible presentation. So give yourself time, practice, 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 and really be yourself. So feel free to screenshot this and put it on your wall for future presentations. Thank you, everyone. I greatly appreciate this opportunity to share my tips with you all.
Thank you, Quinn. If we can add in some virtual thank yous and clapping, but no, we appreciate it for joining us, Quinn, and some great tips, great suggestions, great input. For the mentors on the phone, anybody else want to add in some comments or want to ask any questions to maybe help Quinn elaborate or clarify some more of her comments?
Just a comment that I think I learned so much and definitely learned something new. In my presentations, I do intro, agenda, and then the slides. But yeah, I from now on, I think I'm gonna make it a point to add in a slide about a story or a joke. I think joke is more my brand, maybe.
Love it.
Well, and I'll just add in, I know out of one of the tips that Quinn went through in her presentation that I relate to, and in my business, I do a lot of presentations. It's part of my company as a construction company and the way we pursue new projects and our business development. And the way I found to be most successful as far as my personal presentation capabilities is what Quinn talked about. It's just make sure you're being prepared. You're prepared. So I definitely am the type of person that a couple of days before my presentation, I'm practicing at home. Sometimes it's to my wife. Sometimes it's just myself alone in the kitchen. And I want to make sure that I'm familiar with the material that I'm presenting to. And then it's much more natural for me to speak to it in the actual presentation or the day of the presentation. So the more prepared I am, the more I know my material, the better I perform in my presentation the day of. So that's the one that I can probably relate to the most, that I found to be success, that helped me to be successful in my skills. Anybody else?
I think with me, sometimes it's my hands, like, whether you put them in your pockets or maybe you're clapping or you're doing sometimes just holding a pen. And that's even with practicing, like Jacob said, when you have an audience, you're in the mirror, you can project, you can talk, you can work the room with your eyes, but sometimes even just my hands, not being a soldier, just having something there so my hands are always active. But not Italian, talking too active.
Yeah, Kevin, I totally understand. I love talking with my hands, but being very aware of your body language is key. Even just showing your palms, occasionally not talking too much. I guess they say if you show your palms, it's a sign of trust and people will trust you more. So yeah, that being mindful of your expressiveness or if you're demonstrative or not.
Well, great. Thank you, Quinn. What I would like to do, we're finished a little bit early, but I don't want to wrap this up yet. I want to use maybe 5 or 10 minutes. I've pulled up some presentation examples from a previous year. What I will do also for all the mentors, I'll send out these files and examples for you to use with your individual high schools to give our students this year examples of successful presentations or how teams in previous years have achieved their presentations and what they've done. So I just want to take maybe a few minutes, and I'm going to flip through them quickly just for the purpose of this meeting, just so we're not on here for much longer. But I just want to show everybody other examples. So just bear with me here. Let me get my screen share going. Make sure okay, so I think everybody sees this presentation, right? University Station.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. So this was one team. And again, I'm just going to flip through these quickly. I may speak a little bit about how they chose to present. Here are the project collaborators. This is basically introducing their team. Our project goal, a couple of statements on what their project was about. You can see the animation they have in their presentation. A little bit of background. This is the location. The first floor. This is their floor plan of their project. Nice little 3D rendering that they chose to do of their project. Interior renderings. I don't know if they did, I don't recall if they did this one themselves or if they found that picture. A little bit more on their floor plans. I think this is a second floor. That was the second floor. Yep, and there's a second floor rendering. Aerial view, again, showing an interior 3D rendering. And I know some of our teams are using 3D type software to create their current projects. So that's the options you have with those 3D software applications, is to do nice three-dimensional renderings or isometrics. Here they talk about green space and sustainability. If you remember, we had a sustainability portion of our ACE Mentor program. They did their budget analysis in this format right here of their project. And they did a scheduled timeline as well. And that was the end of that presentation. Let's see, this was West Broward High School coming up from that year. This team name was called Premise Construction. Here is how they chose. This team chose to show their team members. They used individual pictures of themselves. You can see they're identifying the different roles that each person was on their team. Okay, they call this a perspective view. It's obviously an aerial view. It looks like from Google Maps. And now they applied a rendering of their site plan on the map. Rendering of their building from different perspectives. Building sections. Spoke about some site amenities and site highlights on their project. I think this was a park type project this year, if I remember correctly. Let's see, this is their mechanical site plan. Remember, this is one of our deliverables. They chose to show it on their presentation. Their mechanical, this is their actual mechanical floor plan. I see they call it a site plan, but it shows all their ductwork distribution in the building. Excuse me. An electrical site plan showing where their transformer location is, their generator. There's their transformer. Here's a plumbing floor plan. This year we did some plumbing plans. That wasn't part of our curriculum this year, but we did have it in previous years. This is their civil site plan, water, sewer, drainage. Here is their construction schedule and their budget information and how they chose to present their budget. And that was it for that team. I know I'm flipping through these quick, guys. I just want you to get a feel for how other teams in previous years chose to present their information, their deliverables, and their presentation. So this company was called Global Construction. They had a table of contents, and this is common. I'm sure Quinn will tell you some presentations have a table of contents of what the presentation will show. Others just go right into the presentation. So just different approaches of how to present your material. So this is a medical school, a little bit of information behind it, the location, a little bit more background information. This is their layout, some elevations of their building, some features of their project. Okay, here we get into some of the drawings that they did. So this is their floor plans. Looks like a first floor and a second floor plan. This is the electrical plans. Although this looks more like mechanical, I believe. Here is the plumbing plans that they did for their project. They talked a little bit about air conditioning, generator, fire pump, and sprinkler system. Okay, so here's their mechanical plan, excuse me. And then they did some isometric drawings once again. So they obviously used a 3D software application for their project also. Here's a close-up of their elevation views, some of their details. Building and site logistics. Remember that was part of the construction management class that Matt Thompson and I did. So they talked about some site logistics during construction. Talked about some of the materials they're going to use, or more importantly, the materials that they weren't going to use in their project, as you can see here. Some layout features. Here is the way they presented their schedule and their cost. They went into high detail here, as you can see. And that was that presentation. And let's see, this is from ATC of that year. I believe this was the winning presentation, if I remember correctly, from this year. I may be a year off. I know ATC won it at least once or twice. Here is once again an outline, such as a table of contents, like I mentioned before. Yes, this was, I think, the winning presentation this year. This is the team members. Project statement. That's a rendering of their front of their building. This is the location of their site. A little bit of an analysis of their site. Did a nice job there. Some site features. Obviously, they went out there and took some pictures, unless, oh, they got this from Google Earth, it looks like, or Google Street View. Here's a modeling of their site plan. This was a clinic facility, that's right, if I remember correctly. So they identified the different rooms. This is like a facilities plan of the different rooms that are going to be in there. This is their bubble diagrams. Remember, this was one of the first things we did at the beginning of our school year. Bruce Davis did a great job in his architecture presentation at the beginning of our school year, talking about the starting point of planning your projects with bubble diagrams. And now they're showing how that bubble diagram morphed into their actual floor plan. Now here comes their different elevation views of their building. Once again, you can see the different animation styles they used in their actual PowerPoint approach here. Some features inside their building. Exam room. Looks like some interior and exterior aesthetics. Medical equipment. Again, this was a clinic project that year. I think we had a clinic and a park to choose from that year. They went into some specific details about the structural makeup of their building. That was not one of our requirements this year, but we did discuss that in previous years. Now they're going into their MEP information, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So a little bit of mechanical background. Here's their mechanical plans. little bit of background on the electrical. Here's their plumbing, sanitary and water distribution. And now they're going to the construction element of their presentation. So once again, logistics, such as site features and how to manage the site during construction. Here's their estimated cost that they did. They did a little bit simpler than some of the other projects. And they also did a schedule as well. And that was the end of their presentation. I think that was the last one I wanted to show everybody. So for all of our students that will be watching this recording over the next few days, that series of slides there gives you a very good example of how other teams in previous years approached their presentation, both from a content perspective and also just from their professionalism and the animation that they put into the presentation. Of course, that's just the presentation. There was also the speaking component to it, that Quinn spoke to, and how to prepare for it and how to speak about your presentation as you're going through the slides. With that said, Matt or anybody else, any concluding comments that you want to share as we wrap this up?
I don't know, can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, the one comment I would like to say and suggestion is what Quinn said, practice, practice, practice. The better you know your materials, the more comfortable you are presenting it.
We are in the last 3 weeks, guys. So sometime over the next 2 weeks, everybody should be doing their in-class presentation competitions. Good luck to each of you at the 5 different schools. And May 10th, we'll be sending out some information shortly about that presentation night, where we will have a competition with the 5 teams, one representing every high school. And we'll announce the winner by the end of the night. We will also be announcing the scholarship recipients at the presentation night on May 10th. So if you are a senior and you qualify for the scholarship, you have approximately 1 more week to get your application in. So please take advantage of it. We don't want that money to go to waste. Good luck preparing for your presentations. And we'll see you all on May 10th. Thank you again, Quinn, for joining us tonight. We appreciate your time and all the information that you shared.
My pleasure. Good luck, everyone.
Have a good night,
Thanks again.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Bye.